For me, especially, I've been living my dream when I was playing as a pro, and I never wanted to retire, but at some point it just felt like the amount of work I put in, the amount of effort I put in for no reward is not worth it. So
what's probably been the biggest learning for you to make yourself stick around for as long as you have?
It's like a huge balance for players. Most people either have a big ego or they kind of are like me, where your confidence is really low if you're the worst on the team and stuff like that. So it's like a really hard balance. And
I see the hat behind you, the famous Finny hat. Tell me the story of where that came from. Why did you first wear that? What made you put it on the first time?
Something I wanna be known from is having a smile on my face, and yeah, eventually it kind of faded out a little bit because all my teammates cringed at it. But at the last season, I still had it with me when I had supportive teammates.
Metsa, I caught you just as you're drinking your water there. Welcome to Be On The Game. I'm excited to have you on because you're one of the legends of Rocket League, and you've had such an interesting story along your journey. And I think there's a lot of stuff that you probably couldn't speak about at the times in that journey that I'd love to go into through this. Just because, you don't want to publicly talk about the way things are affecting you at the time, and especially with retirement in esports, it's quite a tough topic to speak about on social media. So it's going to be a really good opportunity to talk about all that stuff. But first of all, how are you doing? How are you enjoying your first extended break?
That's a hard question to start with. Already, I think I'm doing good in terms of life's all good, but yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm at the best spot mentally, and I need something to work on and have something to have in my life, some kind of project or something. So a little bit of a waiting game, but yeah, I'm good. I've been enjoying the Finnish summer, seeing family and friends a lot more than I have in the past 6 years. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, lots of disc golf.
Yes, I've done quite a bit of disc golf, but I also started to do some other hobbies as well.
Yeah, I mean, I said that about enjoying the first break because typically that's what people would say to someone when they've retired from something. They're like, oh, you finally retired and you get to enjoy your break here. But what it seems like in Rocket League esports is retirement is less of a decision of wanting to retire, but sort of almost having to retire. Is that how you describe your retirement? And what's been that last phase of your pro career been like?
Yeah, I think that the pictures is pretty good. I think for me, especially, I've been living my dream when I was playing as a pro, and I got to do what I wanted to do and love doing. So I never wanted to retire, but at some point it just felt like the amount of work I put in, the amount of effort I put in for no reward is not worth it. So I think at that point you have to kind of consider, what do you want to do? Do you want to spend this extended off season running your butt off and not getting an opportunity, or do you want to try and do something else with your life?
Yeah, and with that, doing something else with your life, I feel like you've tweeted it out that you're interested in coaching, and I feel like you as a player are one of those players that a lot of people would respect to coach you. You're someone who's continued developing throughout your whole career despite the adversity you've been part of. You're someone who is very well spoken. You seem very mentally strong as a player, so that always works quite well as a coach. And also there's a whole generation of players like Farah, for example, who are going into these coaching roles and doing an amazing job. I guess, did you expect coaching to be the route you'd go to after being a pro player, or is that something that people have recommended to you? What's the thoughts behind going towards coaching?
I think at the start of my career, I would have never thought I'd become a coach because of I didn't really have that deep of an understanding in learning, and it all kind of happened like very naturally, and I never really had that kind of uh, analytical point of view into Rocket League. But when I got older, I learned more and more about how self-improvement works and how to get better without it happening naturally, because I think a lot of the pro players, it just happens to you naturally. When you're good at learning new stuff, you don't have to think about too much what you're doing. But I think I've learned a lot about how to improve individuals and a team, and how to solve problems, which is a lot of the time what you need to do. So I think that's something I could do still in coaching, and I still love Rocket League, and I still love esports and sports in general. I think that's my one passion in life. So I think, yeah, I want to stay in this if I just get the chances.
Yeah, I mean, what you said there about, dealing with adversity, you're a player that was, you're part of a team where you're very close friends with your team. And we look back at season 4, season 5, and you came second at season 4, third at season 5. Amazing performance from you guys as a team. And then you were dropped in a way that a lot of people didn't believe was expected or was the right decision, and so on and so on. And it was the whole talk of the scene was for a while was, how could you drop Metza? And since then we've had loads of examples similar to that, but nothing was quite the same as the success you had post being dropped versus the success of your teammates, who unfortunately didn't quite keep up as long as you did. Talk me through that period of your pro career where you're on Complexity, everything's going great, you get top 3 at season 5, you're thinking this is amazing, and then the next season you have to find a new roster.
That is a big period. A lot of things happen in that short amount of time. I think, like, after season 3 with that team, we stuck together. Then we had a great season 4, and then we were like all happy life and happy family. But after that, I think we got the big contract. We actually felt like we can do this for a living, and I think things started to go sideways a little bit with the attitudes. And when you've been at the top, you kind of take it for granted a little bit as soon as you've been there, and you think it's easy at that point, because it kind of was easy at the start, but it's very hard to stay at the top. But yeah, things started going sideways. I think there was a lot of talk behind my back with other players, and like thinking about if there should be roster moves. I think even there was some like LANs in between that we weren't doing that good in. I think they wanted to do roster moves before, but we had good results. I was always against roster moves, and I was proposed roster moves even before that, or after that. I usually say no if it's really unneeded. But basically, it started feeling like I'm getting distance from the team, just everyday interactions, because we were talking in TeamSpeak every day, and it felt like I was kind of getting pushed to the side with conversations, and just they're playing ranked with Greasy or something like that. It felt like I'm at a distance, and obviously that changes me as well. I think I felt really bad about the situation, and I remember one of the weeks when it was a league play during that time, I was like really angry just going into a series, and I'm never angry. I was, and then I think a lot asked me like, "What is wrong with you? Like, why are you so angry?" I'm like, "It's all good. Like, don't worry about it." And I never explained it, but yeah, it was then when once I'm angry as well. Obviously, I do my job to best of my ability, but I just didn't chit chat and do all that because I don't know, it just felt wrong because they didn't care about me. It felt like, and then yeah, you kind of personally start to distance yourself from the relationship as well, because you feel like you're gonna get hurt the more you try, right? So
yeah, I think that happens quite a lot in Rocket League, especially during the online time. Now we have a lot more boot camps for teams, which is where you can solve issues a lot easier. You can almost read everyone a lot better because you're there in person, and I think it humanizes those moments where when you're online, it's very easy to push someone away and almost like forget there's a human behind that teammate, right? But then, with that roster move, they were two of your best friends at the time. You used to, especially the Scandinavian players, were all very close. And so it must have been quite challenging for you. When you were in that period of time where you knew you were getting dropped and you got dropped, and you were looking for a new roster, What was your thought process there? Was it like a almost like a revenge arc, or were you thinking, I'm still good enough, I should be on a top team? What was the thought process there?
Um, I started having self doubts of myself. Luckily, I got the opportunities, but my confidence at that time was not very high. Even there was like a boot camp where I felt really good going into the worlds, and then even at the boot camp, it felt like things were off, and yeah, it just felt like the whole time that things were off, and my confidence was like at an all time low. The worlds where we actually finished third, I did not play good at all. It was like a thing where people said that I haven't scored, and we made it to top three or something like
Mm,
that. And yeah, it felt like that to me as well. And when you're in a situation like that, you get in your own head. And yeah, basically, I wasn't in a good confidence state, and I was lucky enough to get that opportunity to try out with it was the Envy roster before I joined.
mm.
And that was like my only best tryout. It was like a step down if you think about the team's ranking and stuff like that, but it was still like a good team, and I'm lucky that those guys gave me the chance even after I hadn't had a good individual performance. But at that point, I think I realized what I could do as an individual, and I started gaining my confidence back up slowly with that team, and started having thoughts about what I want to be as a player, and not just I'm not just a role player for other people to play good. I want to play good as well. So yeah, I slowly gained confidence, and I think I played some of my best Rock League in that time.
Yeah, and with that roster, you had a lot of success, and it was almost seen as the story of why you shouldn't drop players, right? You were the case study of, if you drop a player, they might go on to do better things, but sometimes, and this is something I know with someone like Nolly, for example. I knew Nolly at Guild, and I knew Nolly after Guild when he was dropped from Guild, and sometimes that dropping is the best thing to happen for people, right? It wakes you up because it makes you realize you're not safe anymore, and so therefore you work harder, you do the grind, and that's something that I think you embody as a player. Is you're one of the hardest working pros out there. You've maintained high hours for a long time. You make your hours practically good as well. Like I know in recent times you've taken on a lot of things to try and improve your gameplay in the last 2-3 seasons. What was it that you learned the most when you started changing things up to improve yourself? In the last like 5 years, what's probably been the biggest learning for you to make yourself stick around for as long as you have?
I think it's hard to say because it's hard for me to remember to like further back what kind of changed. I think just believing in yourself is the biggest thing that you can do to yourself. It's like a huge balance for players. Most people either have a big ego or they uh, kind of are like me, where your confidence is really low if you're the worst on the team and stuff like that. So it's like a really hard balance, and you should be confident in your own ability, but still believe in your teammates. So I think that was the number one thing for me to learn, to have that balance. For me, it was into the direction of building myself an ego, and for a lot of people in Rock League, it should be, I think, putting down the ego a little bit and bringing down the scale into middle ground. But yeah, that's like the one thing that comes to mind. And then before our endpoint rise to the top, I think I had a lot of work with our sports psychologist, and he helped me tremendously with like a lot of stuff, and I truly appreciate all of that help. And I think some of the biggest lessons that wasn't even from him, but just like talking with him, I learned to just think about short-term individual practice, and I started enjoying the process more than the goals, because it's so hard to win that tournament, and if you're just miserable trying to get there, I think that's not the point. I think I was getting more and more focused in those short-term goals, what I want to do every day, what I want to improve every day. And then even if I go into official games, my goal is to win that individual game. score the next individual goal, and the results will come. And it's like a huge weight off your shoulders. It feels like when you're just not thinking about the long term, if you're just more focused on the short term.
Yeah, it makes it more manageable, doesn't it? I think that's something I took from sport into esports, because back when I used to play ultimate frisbee, our team had this whole mindset which we every single time we scored a point, we'd just say 0-0. Every time we conceded a point, we'd say 0-0. The whole idea being that the next point is no different to the last point. And we used to win games when we were in our strongest, like 9-1, 10-1. But in our heads, it was like, it's 0-0. We've got to get ahead. We've got to get ahead without losing a point, right? And I think that's something that in Rocket League, it's almost like you've got to believe it's 0-0, so you have that winning mindset that you're always trying to score without conceding, right? Like it doesn't change. But you've also got to have a slight awareness of when you might need to change things up in the last minute or so. If it's like 2-goal difference, you're like, right, we need to be more aggressive now. So it's like you've got to be like conscious of the score without letting the score affect your mindset, right? It's like a really weird combination. It takes a lot of training to do. Does that sort of like, when you talk about what you're thinking about in a game, does that sort of resonate with you with how you'd think about scoring goals?
Yeah, I think at the early part, like early half, I'd say it was. I was very uh, very much knew the situation at all times. I was very good at playing defensive when we were in the lead, and that got us a lot of success. And I think that's the big part of what you do. But then, obviously, it's kind of hard if you're naturally like that to be the aggressor when you need to be. So it's kind of something I had to adapt to my game as well. Just thinking that I need to be the difference maker. But yeah, I think most of the time I'm more of that passive guy trying to make sure we don't do anything stupid to concede or something like that.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit. So, jumping forward a bit, we spoke about the story around season 5 to season 6 transition. You had a successful career on and off during that period, and then into COVID at Endpoint, there was some success there, right? And then there was this really crazy transition in the off season where we saw you guys at Endpoint. You're like 12th to 16th in Europe, I believe. I think it was 13th was the exact seeding you were given going into RLCS 21-22 season. And at this point, you picked up Seiko, who, now world champion, an amazing player. I think at the time, everyone was talking about how great he was. But I think it's also fair to say that you, Relating Wave and Eclipse, did a lot of work during that off-season to make yourselves as good as possible for this next season. So, ignoring Seiko, what did you three do to prepare yourself to have the success that you had, especially during that first full split?
I think a lot of the work, actually, even during that time, we already had the sports psychologist, so we were working for the end of the previous season with him, and I think we were starting to like realize what we want as a team and what kind of roster we want to be going into the next season. And after that, there was like, even in the previous season, there was like internal issues and people not trusting each other, and it didn't feel like a complete team. And when Seiko joined, it felt like everyone was on the same page, like uh, emotionally in the game. It felt like it clicked, and when you find a team that clicks, it feels easy. And I think when it feels easy, you gain a lot of confidence. And I think we played at a really high confidence level with me and Wave as well. I think there was a huge boost into our gameplay, and I think Seiko is. Even if you say the question as in without Seiko, did we do? I think Seiko was a huge part of that. I think he affected how we feel as a team as well. And when you're doing scrims and you're doing better in scrims, and when you're just enjoying your time and you're just loving life, I think the whole team environment comes into that. I think our coach, our sports psychologist, our team, everyone felt like we were on the same page, and it felt like we were all enjoying our time.
Yeah, it makes such a difference. It's the old have fun meta, right? The the way people joke about just have some fun with it, but it does help when every single day feels successful, right? Like people don't realize how much continued streaks of losses can significantly diminish an individual's ability, right? Like whenever I've coached a team and we've had a loss, it's then like the hardest weeks of preparation for the next tournament. But the players are still good, right? Like the players are still there. You see that with players like Chronic, right? Like Chronic didn't change a huge amount from pre-Gen G and with Gen G. It was, the talent was there. It's just he needed an environment where he felt like he was having fun. It was on a good team and everything like that. So yeah, that's a huge example there. What was the process of getting Seiko like, right? Like I've heard a little bit about this when I asked you guys back around the time, but I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how did you two manage to find Seiko?
Basically, we didn't have a lot of options to get the top talents because we were, as you said, like seed 13 or whatever. Like people didn't rate that highly of us, and so we thought, okay, we want a new mechanical prospect. I think we need more individual skill on the team to get progress, and I think we had a really solid plan in mind, even before getting the player of what we want and how we want the team to work. So yeah, we were very passive, so we wanted something who's like active and makes the difference, makes the plays. So me and Wave were talking about the different options. Looked at Two's leaderboard. We saw Seiko. We played with him a little bit before that as well in ranked and stuff like that. So we went to ranked leaderboard. Saw him. I think it was like 40th or something like that. And I told Wave, "What about this guy? Like, I think we should take a look at him because he was like not a lot of people knew him. So when people don't know you, you don't get the chances as much as you should. So basically, we went into Liquipedias. So he played with French teams, and he's done really good in French tournaments. He was playing with Zen, Vatira, all those guys back then. But when we looked at results, like he was playing against good French players and beating them, and he's a youngster. And then we went to look at the replays from those tournaments, and you watch how they played. Obviously, Zen wasn't an option at that time or anything like that. So we looked at the players and looked at Seiko's replays, and he seemed really good. So we thought we might as well give him a chance. And at the start of the tryouts, I don't think he did very good. He seemed pretty nervous, and it's really hard to adapt to a team like that from the scratch. So it wasn't like on paper we just instantly pick him because it was like that. I think Eclipse played a huge part in that decision as well, because he watched all the games, and he was very much adamant that Seiko is the one that we should pick. And I think we had another option that was more recognized before but didn't really achieve as much either. So I think Eclipse was a huge part. Me and Wave were like, I don't mind either option. We feel really good with both. So I think whatever works. And a huge part was also Seiko's involvement in just staying after. His English was not very good, but he's still staying after the scrims, trying to ask questions, having fun, just being very interactive, and seems like he's enjoying this environment. And that was like a huge thing for us, where it felt like it fit our personalities, and it felt natural with the personalities as well.
Yeah, huge credit to Seiko on that. I think that was something I noticed when I did the little fun video with you guys, was how much, despite his poor English, Seiko was getting involved with everything, because that's definitely something that happens a lot in Rocket League, where you have these European rosters. It happens in all esports, I think, in Europe, where you have the multilingual rosters, and typically you've got your Scandinavian countries, Netherlands, sometimes Germany as well, with English speaking being like the natural gaming language, right? Like you guys, I remember speaking to some of the other Scandinavian players, and like, English is my first language. I only speak Scandinavian, like whatever their Scandinavian language is, with their family, right? And so for you guys, it makes sense, but especially with France, Spain, Italy, these kinds of countries, it can be quite hard for the cross communication, and things can often get lost in communication when, like you've mentioned before, it's such an important factor is to have that that team environment where everyone talks, stays after scrims and chats. So I think that's something people probably wouldn't even realize about Seiko. They just assume he's an amazing player and it just worked. But like, amazing players have joined rosters before and it's not worked because they don't have that that teamwork side. So that's really good to hear. And I guess I got a question for you, which I think is very specific to your age. And this isn't very nice to talk about considering you're still so young. But as one of the oldest players to attend the modern majors and worlds, what is it that you did that allowed you to stay at the top for that long as an older player?
I think a lot of people could stay at the top if they really wanted to, but as you get older, it's harder to have that drive and passion for the game. I think it's very important that you think about Rocket League all the time. You spend your time playing ranked, think about what you can improve and stuff like that, because people naturally don't do that. They get to the top just having fun, playing ranked, doing streams, and that's it. But I think as you get older, you need to focus a lot more on what you want to do and how to practice, and that helped me to get to a better shape. But I think it's also a lot depends on the opportunities that you get. Some older players don't really get the opportunities. Like it felt like the season after I had a great season, I didn't have that opportunity that I had in the previous season. When you have a solid duo like me and Wave, where I trusted Wave's ability and we can just pick up a talented third, it's so much easier to be a good team than trying to just find a new team as an old guy when the new season starts, because everyone wants the new young gun, and uh, yeah, everyone prefers the new talent to the old talent,
Mm.
because that's just the way Rocket League works. It's a very young esport, and all the best players are very young. So I think unless you're already on a established roster, it's hard to find a new opportunity that is going to be as good.
Yeah, I guess a question about that. Do you think Rocket League esports is about to get older again? Because you're a player who experienced the pre-COVID, post-COVID effect, and I think we lost a lot of the original talent over COVID due to the lack of LANs, the lack of motivation, all the stuff that you spoke about. There was the passion was easily filtered out from a lot of those players, where a lot of young players were then able to dedicate their time to it and be passionate towards the hobby. And now we're seeing those players come through, and I feel like we're starting to see the mechanical players be a lot older. You know, you've got players like AJ and Cash who are in their 20s, who I'd still consider some of the most mechanical players in RLCS despite being older ones, right? Do you think we're going to see now that there's a mechanical generation who are getting into their 20s? Do you think some of those will be able to stay at the top for longer?
100% they can, but it's impossible to predict if they will, because of that's just individual. I've thought before that people that can play until they're older and then they don't have the drive anymore, and then it just doesn't happen. I think it's very hard. So I can't just predict that it's gonna happen, but a lot of people still have that ability to play until they're very very old. And I think if you're already mechanical, that's a huge advantage when it comes to that, because once you get older, you get more of the understanding of the game.
Mm.
And I think that's the hardest part of Rocket League, like mechanics. It's gonna it comes to you very easily or it comes to you hard. For me, it was pretty hard to learn new mechanics, but I put a lot of work into that. But it's
Mm.
hard to understand the game better as a young player. So I think uh, if you're already mechanical enough, like for example, Cash, I think he could have a really long career because he has the mechanics and he's understanding the gameplay at the highest level more and more every season, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a few players like Cash is a good example of it. I think someone like Nolly as well, right? Like Nolly when he was in his prime was like a late teenager. I say prime because but his most successful season's been recently, but mechanical like I'm going to be the standout player, that kind of stuff. That was in his late teens. So now as a early 20s supporting style player, he's got that ability to be mechanical as well. And you saw it with players like Extra, right? Like Extra, even though he was the supporting player on his roster, because he had a history of being that super mechanical player, he was able to pop off in certain situations when BDS needed him. And I think there's going to be more of those players coming through, like the the old guard who have got the mechanics in their locker if they need it, the ones who can still pull them off in ranked and so on, but they just hold them back while they're in tournaments. Because I think we saw that with players like Fairy Peak, didn't we? Where Fairy Peak had quite a lot longer career than most because of that. He could always pull off something if he needed to. So it will be interesting to see whether that happens. I guess from your point of view, do you think the change of the environment that we see now with more in-person training, better support through coaching, psychology, and stuff like that, do you think that's something that could extend careers?
100%. If you have that, if you ability to go to boot camps, for example, for Alpha right now, like he has the support staff of everything. He's been at the top before. He's still at the top. He has people driving him to be the best. He's got a great coach. I think like that's a huge advantage to have. And for me, especially if I would have had the opportunity to be at boot camps like every month or something, I think that I would have gotten it all better. And it's really easy to learn when you're at boot camps, and that's like if you have more ability to be with your team and have the support staff help you and give it that drive. When you're people that drive you forward every day, that's a huge advantage to people that are just home alone and they don't have that uh, supporting staff to drive them forward.
Yeah, 100%. I remember back when, I mean, this is a while ago, but back when it used to be one scrim a day was like the standard where every team was doing one scrim a day. And I remember we'd get to a boot camp for Worlds and everyone was like, let's do three, let's do three. And it was like, why are we suddenly capable of doing three when at home, if we do a second scrim after the first one, you're bored and tired. But yeah, it's such a big factor that when you're on that boot camp, doing three scrims is like, yeah, that's normal, right? Could probably do four or five. But when you're at home, like that third scrim, you're like, oh, right, let's get through this so I can relax. You know, like it's so much different. Just the environment there helps you drive, put forward, put more practice in. You're much more likely to be on the game because you can see your teammates there also grinding. So yeah, such a big factor. Do you think that was a big a part of why the top four European teams last season did as well as they did?
Yeah, I think that has a big factor in it, and I think that was one of the big factors why we did so good at Endpoint as well.
Bootcamp buff.
We had a lot of boot camps during that time, and it was so helpful. And huge props to Endpoint for providing that for us. And yeah, I think that's a huge advantage. It it puts the pressure off in official games, and it gives that huge boost in practice. I think that's something that everyone gains advantage from if you do a boot camp.
Yeah, it's not a sponsor, but shout out to Endpoint with their new HQ, the prac rooms. I think right now a load of Apex teams are at the boot camp facility because there's a big Apex LAN. And I know Moist used the facility last season, but yeah, it's so sick to see more teams on boot camp. So hopefully everyone will learn from this last season how important that was. I thought more teams would learn from BDS because BDS did it way before anyone, right? And they dominated. It was like, well, it's not just the players. There is more to it than just the players, right? So yeah, we shall see. But I guess let's take a break from Rocket League here, Metza. So here on Beyond the Game, we ask every guest what their top 5 games of all time are. So we know you love Rocket League. You're more than welcome to put it in there. But I'm interested to find out about the games around Rocket League that have been a big influence on your life and the games that you particularly remember having a great time playing. So whenever you're ready, give me your top 5 games.
Okay, I'm gonna start from the top and then start from the 5th position, I think. So
Okay.
first is gonna be Rocket League, because that is the one game that I've enjoyed throughout the entire time I played, and I think it's a magnificent game. There's no cheaters. It's a multiplayer game that I love. It has the team aspect. It has the individual skill learning. You can improve yourself in that game so much. I think it is hands down the best game. It's just a fact. It is the best game. Then I think there's like quite a few games that I played with friends. I think CS:GO is the one thing that I played with friends the most, and I've
Mm-hmm.
had great memories from that just from playing with people. So I think I'm just gonna put that somewhere. I'll think about positions later. Then
It was interesting when you said there's no cheaters in Rocket League. I was thinking, I bet Mets has played a lot of CS:GO just based off of that alone, because that's one of the biggest things that puts people off in it, isn't it? Is how many people are able to cheat in that kind of game. But yeah, CS, great game. It's a game I wish I'd played more of, but now I'm a Valorant person, so that's sort
yeah,
of scratched that itch for me.
yeah. I played a bit of Valorant. I don't think that's in my top 5 games.
That's all right. That's all right.
I think it would have been if I had just friends that I played with, but it's always been CS with my other friends, so
Yeah, yeah.
that's I stuck to that. I played World of Tanks when I first got my PC, and I got pretty good at it, and that was my first time where I enjoyed playing a multiplayer game by myself and self improvement. So I think I'll put that in there. Um,
Good game.
uh, on PC, I don't play much. I like because I just played Rocket League for the past 6 years,
Uh-huh.
or even more than that, from since 2016, pretty much. I don't play Rocket League. Then
What about your
maybe like
childhood? Anything in your childhood
yeah,
that...
in childhood, I probably played like Call of Duty, uh, one of the Modern Warfare 2 or 3. I spent quite a bit of time on that, and then I think FIFA is the last one. That's my biggest childhood game.
Which
Playing
one?
FIFA, uh, I don't know,
Any
a
of them?
bunch. Because in Finland you'd play NHL, which is the ice hockey version, and then FIFA is the other one. But I think I preferred FIFA out of those two. So just some of the earlier FIFAs when I was like 8 to 12 years old or something like that. I think
So was that like FIFA '08 or something? FIFA 10? Somewhere around
FIFA
there.
10 sounds pretty good. I think
We'll
we'll go
chuck,
with
we'll chuck
that.
FIFA 10 in there.
Yeah,
And then which of the Call of Duties? Modern Warfare 2 or 3?
2.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's probably the most common answer for the Call of Duty one is the Modern Warfare 2. Everyone tends to lean towards it.
Yeah, especially if you're my age. I think you kind of grew up falling in love with that game. But
Yeah.
okay, my number one is gonna be Rock League. Then second is gonna be World of Tanks.
Uh-huh.
Third is gonna be CS:GO. Fourth is gonna be FIFA, and fifth is gonna be Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, you sound like oh, you're not quite 90s. You are a 90s kid, right? Yeah, you're
Yeah,
98?
I'm 98.
Yeah, 98. You sound like a 90s kid who's grown up on gaming. Like that the World of Tanks maybe is the only one in there, but like you're an esports 90s kid, right?
Yeah,
But no, that's a good list there. I think one of the things that's always interesting with Rocket League players is hearing what brought them to Rocket League, because Rocket League's such a niche game of there's no transferable skills really. The only transferable skills are general sports knowledge, which gives you a slight advantage of like understanding the game early on, of like general concepts, and then I always found like physics-based games tend to help a bit. You know, like fight. I found that like movement within 3D spaces within fighting games and stuff like that, like understanding a 3D space in general, you get a bit of an advantage of. But realistically, there is no like shooter to shooter transferable skills. Did when you started playing Rocket League, did you pick it up naturally at the start, or did it take a bit of time for you to start getting good at it?
funny thing is, I've never been a good at a game at the start. Like, if you think about some people that I played with before, like if you play some games outside of Rocket League, from like pro players, I'm always really bad at the start compared to everyone else. Like, I'm not a very good as a start, but I have this weird learning curve where I don't stop improving. It feels like
Mm,
when a lot of people they are like at a high level at the start, and then they kind of really slowly improve. I think I have like a lateral
yeah,
improvement, which is like really weird. So if I just put a lot of time and thought into improving, I get better at the games. And but I wouldn't say I was very good at the start, and especially for Rocket League, I was worse than some of my friends at the start.
mm,
But then once I started like practicing individually and by myself, I got a lot of progress, and then finding better people to play with, and then getting better than them, and eventually get into the highest level.
yeah. And I guess with that, Do you feel like that sort of straight line improvement, is that due to the way you think about things? Because I feel like you think a lot more than most other pro players. So is that because you're constantly like evaluating how to improve, or do you think it's just by practicing you improve your sort of muscle memory and everything?
I think I'm very used to just learning new skills, and like all of my youth, instead of video games, I practice like different ball games. So in Finland, you'd play ice hockey in the winter and football in the summer and floorball in the fall and stuff like that. So I always was playing some kind of ball sport, and that's how I've always felt. If I'm alone practicing, I try to practice on a new skill, and it must come from somewhere there. I think just
Mm.
I want to learn new things. If you just play the same game and nothing changes, it's just pretty boring. But if you're learning new stuff, I think that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, I guess with the sports stuff you mentioned there, how much of a factor do you think being one of the more active pro players, because you definitely became more active later on, or at least don't take it the wrong way. You look like you're much fitter and healthier now than you were in the early part of your career. I know a lot of pro players who are active before they go pro, they grind too much and sort of push away their active lifestyle in the past. And then you start to bring it back into your life in later life. So do you think that active lifestyle for you had an effect on your career and the longevity of it?
If you mean like in the latter stages, because I started
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, okay. Hard question. I think maybe because during those parts of my life where I was uh, not very fit, and uh, like I had some like Rocket League grind and no really physical goals or anything like that. I think I thought more about Rocket League than I did when I wasn't, but I was also in a worse condition, like mentally. So maybe in a long term, I could have been a better individual Rocket League player, but then I think I would have burnt out way faster, maybe.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to put it. The idea that when you're not looking after yourself physically, your brain is waking up thinking about Rocket League, always thinking about Rocket League. So therefore, you get better at Rocket League, but it's not as sustainable because your mental health can get affected. You can get tired a lot easier, and so on. But then if you're focusing on your fitness, it's like your mind is not focusing on the right thing. Then you're not focusing on the game that you're trying to improve in. So it's like if you wake up and the first thing you think is, I better get to the gym today because I want to look good. And then when you get home from the gym, you're like, oh, I need to rest and I need to eat this and I need to eat that. And then by the time you get to Rocket League, you've spent half your day focusing on your health and not actually focusing on the game. I wonder how many players who are healthy that's affected in that way, because it's definitely like a balance, right? Of being healthy, but also all you think about is Rocket League, right?
I think it would be perfect where you could be in like a bootcamp environment to go and practice, and that's all you think when you're in there. You think about Rocket League, and then you could do your outside stuff outside of that. And I think I learned a lot during boot camps, and then I could still have that healthy lifestyle. Like before my team wakes up, I'd go
Mm.
outside and go throw frisbees or something, or like just enjoy life. And when you're in the boot camp room, I grinded more than anyone else when we got in there, and I used a lot every single bit of the time for Rocket League. So yeah, it's a hard thing to know because there's no, you can't compare different individuals how they do different decisions. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. I know that one of the sort of ideas that I've come up with around fitness is that if a player wants to be fit, it will be better for them, right? Like it will make their career better. If they wake up and they say, "Hey coach, I want some advice around getting fitter. Could you guide me to the right resources, the right people and so on?" Then it's a good thing. If there's someone who doesn't want to do it and you as a coach say, "You should probably like try and work on your fitness or whatever," it's more likely to have a negative effect on their performance than it is a positive effect at that point, because then it's not something they're doing out of choice. It will burn them out more. It's quite tiring. And and it's like it then becomes a problem, right, rather than a positive thing. So I think it's one of those weird ones where as a org and a coach, I think in the past a lot of orgs have tried forcing healthier lifestyles on players, and it doesn't always work out. Whereas if a team wants to be healthier, it does work out, right? It's like a really weird problem that it's really hard to solve, and it's almost like we need more healthy role models, like K-Dot back in the day, right? Like he was a top player in the world, one of the best, and he looked after himself and got himself in shape. So then a lot of players have been inspired by that. Like look at Monkey Moon right now, like he looks so much happier, he looks much better shape, and all of that stuff, and he's finding that success. So it's almost like we can't push it in esports until we see more role models doing it, and then that way more people will just do it naturally without having to be pushed by their orgs.
I think a huge part of it is when you reach those Rock League goals. For example, for me, it felt like I finally won a LAN. Then it felt like I want to be proud of this achievement, and then I looked at the pictures of me winning the LAN. And I was not proud of myself how I looked. So I wanted to do that change, but for a lot of people, they don't really care about that. And for me, at that point, it was a lot about how I wanted to look, which is not the case anymore. But like at the start, it was very focused on I just wanted to look better, and I don't think that's like a very long term healthy way to think about it. But yeah, I think that's like huge motivator for all these top players when they're having success. They want to look good and be proud of themselves. So when they're on that stage,
I mean, when you look at pictures of yourself when you were in the Metsa chant at season 5, and you compare it to where you were when we went back to London the next time, and you could see that improvement for yourself. I guess it's almost like it's a positive thing that you've got it catalogued there, so you can almost see how much you've improved, right? And so it's kind of a nice thing in a way that you were in front of camera when you were not as healthy, so you can then compare it before and after. Speaking of being in front of camera, I see the hat behind you, the famous spinny hat. Tell me the story of where that came from. Why did you first wear that, and like what made you put it on the first time?
I think I probably wore it on stream because I wanted to like pop out from other Twitch streamers, and I streamed quite a bit like in those early seasons, and I was one of the more active streamers out of everyone, but the viewership was not very high back then, and I wanted to pop out, and I wore the hat to just gain more attention, I think. And then it kind of became a thing, and I wore it to the LANs as well. Just try to. It became like my thing. I wanted to be different from other people, and it's just fun. It's something I wanna be known from is having a smile on my face, and yeah, it's just fun. So I kept it, and yeah, eventually it kind of faded out a little bit because all my teammates cringed at it. So, but at the last season, I still had it with me when I had supportive teammates.
Yeah, because there was sort of like the memorable hat meta where it was like you and Corrupted G both got the crowds behind you quite a lot because of the fact you had your hats, and Corrupted G was with the pirate hat and you had your little spinny hat. And now we don't necessarily see the hats, but we see things like memorable flags or memorable like hand gestures people are doing now. Like Monkey Moon's got his flex thing. Radosin's got his little dance that he does, and so like players are definitely getting better at that kind of stuff. But I remember at the time, like you were one of the only people who had a funny thing, right? So it did make you stand out quite a lot. And I guess the sort of last question before we sort of wrap up here would be about making content as a player, because that's something that you hear over and over and over again. It's like, get your content out there so you've got a brand and so on. But like, you were one of those players who you grinded your streams out and you had good viewership, and you put the hours in and everything like that. But it's like, that's a lot of work towards building a brand, and a lot of the time it can affect your ability to perform. It's quite exhausting. There's quite a lot of pressure with it. Like, how did you manage doing content alongside being a pro player, and what would be your views on encouraging other people to do it?
I think it's very hard if you're naturally not into it, and I think a lot of people just don't like being this energetic guy on stream for 3 hours every day. It's like tough. You can't act on stream because you get burned out. So if you have a personality for it, it's great for you. But if you're a um, very, I don't know how to call it, like just a average Joe that doesn't really have a lot of energy to like be energetic on stream, I think it's going to be very hard to do it actively. And I think a lot of people are driven by a success. So if you're doing good and your stream is doing good, you do it, and then once your stream goes into like a slower mode, I think that motivation becomes nothing, and you stop streaming. And for me, it feels like I stopped streaming in the middle of my career at some point because my performances were bad, and it felt like I'm not getting anything from the stream. I'm just sad if I'm using my practice time on streaming instead of something like that. But during my last season with Endpoint, I streamed every day for a period of time. I streamed quite a bit more than I have before, and I enjoyed it because I used it as practice. So basically, I would stream for 3 hours or something every day, and it would not be your average ranked streamer that reacts to crazy shit. It was just I streamed my practice, and that was it. And that was sustainable for me until I needed a break, and then it's hard to get back into the rhythm. And when I had the success, it's easy, but then once you get back into it after a break and you don't have a lot of viewers and you're trying to grind, but you're not getting success on the field, it's very hard to keep that up.
Yeah, yeah. I think playing Rocket League ranked on stream is one of the hardest things I've ever streamed, just because it's so exhausting to try and be a streamer whilst playing ranked Rocket League. But you've had an amazing career, and you've done so much for the esport with being a role model for everybody out there, and I'm sure a lot of people will hopefully see you back in some form. So I guess the final question will be what's the plans? What's next for Metsanauris?
Well, I want to be involved in anything and everything. So if someone needs help with anything in Rock League, or you have an opportunity, or you have a podcast you want to start, or you want to get me on your team as a coach, or just help you out on picking a team or anything like that, I just want to be involved and help people, and I just want to stay in the scene and be active as much as I can.
Yeah, it's a tough old place, esports, when the easy route goes away, right? Like the obvious easy route comes to an end. You got to find a new route, and there's a lot of people that need to trust you in that. And it's also very competitive, right? Like especially coaching now. There's more coaches than there are coaching spots for the first time in a long time, right? So now we're starting to see every team has a coach, and you've almost got to be like selected over someone, or maybe we even start seeing teams with two coaches, and we start going towards more what other bigger esports have. So I cross my fingers for you, Metsa. I'm sure we'll see you back, and I appreciate you coming on as well, of course. And we end the podcast with the same question, and that's, what does gaming mean to you?
Gaming is an outlet for my energy, so I can feel like I do those things that I love every day.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.